Good afternoon and welcome back to the Word Celtic Fans View. After a few short days off back in the motherland, it's back to normal reality for me. It's the weather is unbelievable back home. Make sure that you wrap up and stay warm. Anyway, Celtic news. There's been a few things that I've missed over the weekend whilst being away, but there's some, obviously I missed out the whole Scales penalty thing for Ireland. We'll miss over that. I want to talk about Brendan Rodgers telling the board that he cannot sell Nico Kuhn. Before that, we're going to talk about Gustav Lagerbielke, the AGM, and it looks like Lagerbielke, we all know that he's a player who I think was harshly treated by Celtic personally. I thought he was a player that had time to grow at Celtic, but the player himself, and it's always good when we get to the international breaks, because when we get to international breaks, players are away from the clubs that they are at, either on loan or the parent club, or even at Celtic, and they do tend to talk to the media. And when they talk to the media, they tend to let you know what's on their mind. And Gustav Lagerbielke has admitted that he may have to leave Celtic for FC20 permanently in the summer. I've moved there on loan earlier this year, and it's a straight loan until this summer, he said. There's always the possibility that I will be bought. And so far I've felt good there. We'll see how it goes, says Gustav Lagerbielke. There's always a chance of going back to Celtic. I still have a contract there. It's not out of the question at all. We'll have to be close. We'll wait to the end of the season, he goes on to say. Wait to the end of the season. He says, I'm at a fantastic club. Celtic is a fantastic club, but we'll see what happens. The fact that Lagerbielke was even allowed to get put out on loan just a year after joining tells you everything about the players that were brought in that summer. We all remember that we brought in something like 7 or 8, 9 players, and Brendan Rodgers even alluded to it, the fact that we could have brought in players earlier on the last summer, his first full sort of summer window. The first window wasn't his, we all know that. But anyway, his attitude in training has been absolutely fantastic. Lagerbielke's generally done okay. He scored a goal in the Champions League, Gustav. He scored a goal from a header in the Champions League, and then after that he kind of just fell out the team a bit and disappeared. And it looks like Gustav is thinking that he may have to leave Celtic in the summer. And a lot of you'll say, look, it doesn't matter. He wasn't that good. Was he not that good, or was he just not given the time? And that's one thing that we look at younger players that come through the Celtic system. They're put out on loan. You know, Gustav was brought in on a lengthy contract, and you could say he wasn't given time. You look at another player that was brought in at the same time. He's stayed at Celtic this season and he's never got near the pitch either. Anyway, we move on for Gustav, and we're going to talk about the Celtic AGM. It is just round the corner. And if you remember back to September, Celtic announced that they had £77 million in the bank, and that was really before they got any money in from the Champions League. Yes, the Champions League was just starting at that point, and Celtic will now have had the first payment from the Champions League. So I think when the AGM comes around, it'll be interesting to see if Celtic do come out and say exactly what is in the bank. And I think it'll be closer to the 100 million. It has to have went up eye-watering amount due to the fact that we've been in the Champions League. Since September, we've sold Champions League tickets, the ticket packages. And even Brendan Rodgers got to spend some good money in the summer. That had all been done and dusted at the time that September came around, and it was put out there that we'd spent the good money. Anyway, when we started this season, the 24-25 campaign, Peter Lawwell and Nicholson and everything, they'll be asked questions. Celtic will be asked about standing sections behind the Celtic end. The Green Brigade and the Boys Ultras groups pushing for that. And a lot of fans are saying, well, why should we move? Because we've sat there since the stadium was built, since it was redeveloped under Fergus McCann, and we don't really want to move. And then there's also the corporate end of that side of it. Although it's not a fantastically massive corporate area, people have to be moved. And then there's also going to be the question of the redevelopment of the main stand. People will say that it's been leaked, it hasn't leaked, but there was a study said that it was going to cost around about £80 million to transform the main stand and make the stadium all the same size. Will Celtic finance? Celtic will get finance for that kind of money, no worries whatsoever. Even if they were to finance half of it and then pay the other half themselves, I think that it would be a cracking investment for the club. But there's other areas that the club need to sort out before the real development. In my eyes, they need to get the whole area. I mean, they've had planning permission for the hotel since 2019 or something, haven't they? And they haven't moved that further forward. I mean, I don't know how long the planning permission will stay in place. But the Celtic AGM will take place on Friday, the 22nd of November. Remember, the 22nd of November, just next week. And it will take place at 10:30 a.m. The annual event is where shareholders, people that have had shares, and a lot of people bought shares at the time that Fergus McCann was in the club. I can remember going to one of the share issues, and Peter Lawwell was there that day. And it shows you how long Peter Lawwell has been at the club. One of the things that they'll be talking about is the company's annual accounts and the auditor's report, strategic report, and director's report to the end of June 2024. Yes, it is last year's set of accounts, which will show that we're in a fantastic place. But we've had a fantastic summer. We sold Matt O'Reilly for £25 million. We've also had this year's Champions League money come in. So there adds another bit of chunk of cash. Will Celtic release the data on what is in the bank at the time of the AGM? They'll be asked to reappoint Michael Nicholson as a director, that reappoint Desmond Dermond and all the other ones that are in the PLC. And it's always interesting that the two biggest, the second and third biggest shareholders of Celtic never attend an AGM, never attend, but we don't know if they attend matches at Celtic. This is the thing. And they may do. They may even sit in 1-1-1. That'd be a shock, wouldn't it? If the guy that owns 10 million and 6 million in shares in Celtic sit up the back of 1-1-1, that would be brilliant, wouldn't it? That would be funny as anything. I don't think they do. There's more chance of them sitting in the club Celtic lounge, but it would be funny if they just sat in normal seats if they attend the football at all. You'll be asked to reappoint the auditors, etc., and then there'll be the remuneration. Yes, how much the directors get paid and all that kind of stuff. But it's always an interesting thing, and it's always a backslapping thing, and they'll tell Brendan he's doing a good job and we've got to spend money, and you know what they'll say, and then you'll have the Celtic Trust stand up and demand a place on the board with the Celtic fans having a bigger say on the board. And my thing with that is you can look at a club like Motherwell, who are a fan-run club, and there's a kind of a limit on the amount of money that they can generate internally. Celtic can generate a lot of money through external partners like Adidas, through the Champions League, etc. We know that the way that the business is run, would a bigger fan-based ownership, would that be a good thing for Celtic? Tell me that in the comments. And then, I'm not too sure. I mean, I think that there's a lot that the Celtic board need to change sometimes, and there's a lot that the Celtic board do wrong. But when they do things right, we have to give the Celtic board credit. Let's face it. I mean, the business model, they've stuck to it over the years, whilst a lot of fans have said, look, just spend the bloody cash. Spend the cash. And now we've got the cash. What are they doing with it? And then you get the other side saying, well, pay it back down, half your teeth missing, mate. But anyway, they'll talk about everything that is good for Celtic, and it is a fantastic time, because I think that we're on the road again. I think we're on the journey again to another very successful period. But with Brendan Rodgers only having 1.5 years left on his contract, yes, he's only got half this season and the next season, it's going to come down to whether the PLC and the board will back Rodgers and ultimately his dream and his vision for Celtic. And that includes one player. And just as a side note, we are sitting on 19,749 subscribers, which is absolutely fantastic. We are trying to hit 20,000 before the 15th of next month. Will we do it? As long as we do it before the end of January, when we play them, that'll be fine. Anyway, Brendan Rodgers will be asked the question about Nico Kuhn, the man who is getting a lot of speculation. And Celtic are bracing themselves for Nico Kuhn bids. Having seen the likes of Matt O'Reilly leave the club and Jota for significant fees in recent windows, the Celtic hierarchy know that they can allow themselves time, and Brendan Rodgers knows that Kuhn is one of the most important players to Celtic. He's one of the players that we want to build the team around, along with other players in the midfield and defence. It also it means we have to get someone better to see his vision for strikers, I think. But When Nico Kuhn plays for Celtic this season, he's been absolutely phenomenal. He has been absolutely phenomenal. And Brendan Rodgers has instructed the board to sell him at no cost. You need to keep him. They need to keep him. He wants to keep him. And we all know what happened the last time, that the board never got Brendan the players that he wanted. But the fact that Celtic are bracing themselves for offers for Nico Kuhn amid growing interest from the Premier League, look, do you really think that the 24-year-old, if he has any ambition, which he does, to get into the German team, do you think that going to Brentford or Fulham is key for the player to get into the German team? Is that really the level of player that the German teams play for? I'm not too sure. I mean, the Germans that play in the national team tend to play at the top end of European football, and I think they're going to like a Fulham or that. I just think that Nico Kuhn, whilst he's doing fantastic at Celtic, dropping out of the Champions League and coming out of the Champions League and being away, and people will say, but he's playing in England. I don't get that. If he wants to play for the national team, he has to be doing it for a club in the Champions League. Moving to a Brentford, moving to a Fulham, he's never going to get to the high level of games that he gets with Celtic. Rodgers regards Kuhn as a key man in the team, as we all do. We all see that when Kuhn doesn't play, he's missed. And let's face it, the two reserve wingers that we do have just don't cut the mustard, do they? I mean, Kuhn arrives for a fee of just $3 million from Austria, from Vienna in Austria, and just last January. And since then, this season has 10 goals, 11 assists, and 17 appearances so far this season have been pretty much paramount to everything that Celtic have done this year. To sell our biggest assets this coming summer, I think that would be criminal. Celtic are now in a financial position where we don't have to. Nico Kuhn's only been here for the 1 year. It's not even a full calendar year that he has been here. Give the player time. And I think that his advisors would be wrong to tell him to jump ship at such an early stage. I, for one, think that it's far too early in his development to go on to be an even better player. And Kuhn is a player that does have ambitions to play for Germany. And I think if he wants to play at the highest level, he has to be seen ultimately playing at the highest level. And no disrespect to the clubs that have been mentioned with him, but they will not get into the Champions League and be able to perform, and they won't have the stadia that Celtic do on an ongoing basis. I think that if Celtic get into the Champions League next year, it will be then. We'll get them past this summer. Obviously, there will be some kind of bids, but I think Celtic are in a position. Will teams try and put in a cheeky bid for Nicholas Kuhn in the winter transfer window? I think it's maybe too early for that, but then again, you'll get the likes of a Fulham and such like trying to beat the big guns to the player, a bit like when Matt O'Reilly was sold. But can Celtic hold off another bid of a $25 million bid for a player? I suggest that they can. And because that we are so early into the contract with Nico Kuhn and his development, remember the first half of the season that he had last season at Celtic, he didn't set the header on fire, did he? It's only this season, and he's doing similar to what Matt O'Reilly did. Although Matt O'Reilly had Aaron Moy keeping him out the team, Nico Kuhn wasn't as fit as what he'd like to be, and Brendan Rodgers says let him get a full pre-season, and I think get him a second pre-season with the players that Brendan Rodgers ultimately wants to bring into the team, and let's have a go at the Champions League for a second year in a row with a fantastic squad, because if we don't, I think that we're in chance with losing Brendan Rodgers after the third year of his contract. If we go out and sell their best players next summer with Brendan Rodgers only having 1 year left on his contract, what does that say ultimately to Brendan Rodgers from the board? Does it say that, look, as a business, we know that players will come and go, we know managers will come and go, but if we want to have the level of success that we've had before and get into a second 9 in a row, ultimately, I think behind the closed doors, Celtic will be plotting to get a third 9 in a row. And this will be the long-term vision, to get the third 9 in a row, to make sure that no other club in Scotland can even claim that title at all, ever. Anyways, glad to spit it out, Baz. Glad I'm back. First video is always a little bit shady because it's been a couple of days off. It was fantastic being back in Scotland. It's even better being back here so I can get back to work and back doing what I love most, and that's Celtic videos. Anyway, on that note, we will be going live at 8 p.m. Celtic Park tonight. As always, on that note, hasta luego. Have a nice day, Celtic fans all around the world.